Welcome back to Not Another Mummy podcast with me, Alison Perry. There's no denying that experiencing miscarriage is devastating. And my guest on this episode is campaigning for a change in law around the paid leave that parents are entitled to when this happens. Angela Crawley is MP for Lanark and Hamilton East, and she wants the government to introduce a statutory requirement for employers to provide 3 days of paid miscarriage leave for all parents who experience a miscarriage before 24 weeks of pregnancy. Currently, bereavement legislation entitles parents who lose a baby after 24 weeks to 2 weeks of paid bereavement leave, but there is nothing in place before that. Angela recently became a parent herself when her partner gave birth to their first baby in January. So as well as talking about her campaign, we discuss those sleepless nights and how, as a same-sex couple, they are juggling the parenting. There's a link to the petition in the show notes, and I urge you, once you've had a listen, go and take a look and please do sign it. Hi Angela, thank you so much for joining me today. What's your day been like so far? Is it wet and windy up in Scotland, or have you got a bit of sunshine?
No, it's typically raining as usual in Scotland. So, well, actually that's not true. It's been dry this afternoon, so I took my little boy a walk and that's been my day.
That's good. Nice to get a bit of dry weather. I know what that's like, having grown up in Scotland. I know you've got to grab those chances while you can, haven't you? So firstly, congratulations. You mentioned your little boy there. Congratulations on becoming a parent. You and your partner had your first baby recently.
We did. We had our little boy Hudson in January. So he is 8 weeks old tomorrow.
Wow. What has that been like? Because you're right in the thick of it. That's like proper, that's a tough stage when they're so little. How are you getting on?
Okay, I'm really lucky. I had my partner gave birth in January, so she's off on maternity leave for a year, and I was really lucky that I got to have 6 weeks at home, so I really got to spend that time at home. And then last week it was a bit of a culture shock going back to London, and I think the job itself, absolutely, I think there's so much more kind of digital and you can do stuff online and do a lot more virtual, but the actual travel, I'd forgotten how much it adds to your week.
And are you coping okay with the sleepless nights? Because you've got a very high pressured job. It must be hard to do that on not very much sleep.
Yeah, it's a bit of a juggling act. We try and kind of do a bit of shifts just so that some of us can get some sleep at some point. But yeah, it's definitely an adjustment to not. We had quite a nice lifestyle and to suddenly not get a full night's sleep is...
It's such a shock, isn't it? I think, honestly, I think that was one of the big things for me when I had my first. It was just from going from no kids to one kid was just whoa, your whole life just feels like it gets just turned upside down, doesn't it? I think what you're saying though, in terms of doing shifts, I think that's the key, because the worst thing you can do is to have both of you there awake, while one of you's feeding the baby, having both of you awake, and just one of you get sleep. But at least if one of you's feeling a little bit more kind of with it the next day, then you're on to a bit of a winner, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know, I've spoken to other people and I'm like, how did you do it? And some people just power through, and I all credit to them, because if you don't have any other option, or if you live in quite a small flat or whatever, you've just got to, haven't you? Because it's not like you can go into another room or whatever. So I think we seem to sometimes, like every parent, you're one day we're getting this, the next day we're not getting this.
And it just carries on like that. It really does. You feel, I remember really strongly feeling we've cracked this, we're onto a winner, and then something will change and it's no, we were just getting to grips with this and it's all up in the air again. But I'm always curious with same-sex parents whether there's more of a feeling of equality. Obviously you fight for equality in so many ways, with your job. When it comes to caring for a baby, are you just as likely to kind of jump in and help as your partner is? Is there, do you feel like there's more equality there?
I mean, we don't really know any different, if that makes sense. Like, it's not like we've ever had it any other way. I would like to think that I am very much equal parenting, and I do as much as I can when I'm here. I mean, my partner might think otherwise, but no, I think we've kind of got it. Us, like, we both kind of do as much as we can, and we sort of switch on. If one of us needs just a minute, the other one takes over. So I think we're both quite hands-on in that sense, and I don't feel like I'm that kind of other parent that just goes away and forgets.
Yeah, bye, see you. To be fair though, my husband is a stay-at-home dad, and I work full-time, more than full-time, let's just say more than full-time, to make myself sound better. And I am that one. Like this morning, I closed the door to head out for meetings, and one of my 3-year-old twins was screaming about World Book Day and not wanting to wear her costume, and I was just like, see ya, closing the door behind me, like, oh, you know, one of you's got to do that at some point, you know.
I know, it's true. And I think, yeah, World Book Day, I enjoy seeing everyone else's World Book Days. We're not quite there yet. I feel like if we try and dress them up, you'd just not be for having it. But yeah, that seems like when you get to the good bit. But then maybe if there's twins, it's just try to get both of them in a costume, isn't it?
Yeah, and it totally depends on the personality of the child, the costume that they want to wear. Like, so many variables. I'd be quite happy if World Book Day just didn't exist, but I know that I shouldn't be saying that. It's not in the spirit of it, but, you know, I
feel like that's very honest though, because like parents already have enough with like Halloween and every other holiday that seems to require a costume these days.
Oh my
Book days just.
Oh yeah.
And some books are high maintenance. Some books have like a lot of costume to go into. I've seen some like excellent parenting though, where they've obviously picked the book that's got like the least, and it's like, here's a penguin top with a penguin book and a penguin teddy, that'll do. There's definitely a spectrum of how much effort needs to go into these things.
Yeah, my eldest, she's going tomorrow for her, she's 11 and it's her school's doing it tomorrow, and I've said to her, just go in your own clothes and you can be a muggle from Harry Potter, and she's quite happy with that. So I'm like, yes, that's a win. It's a win. Now, I want to talk to you about the important work you're doing for parents around miscarriage. But before I do, I just want to touch on, I feel like it's fair to say that everyone's childhood affects their view on the world. Now, looking back, what are the things that you saw and that you experienced that led you to becoming an MP?
I mean, quite honestly, probably the most profound thing was losing my own parent. My mum passed away when I was 14, and I think that probably changed the course of my entire life. I became effectively like a carer for my younger brother. My dad was a single parent, so overnight our life was kind of turned upside down. And I think that does change you quite substantially, because you go from being a child to being, you know, an adult and a carer really overnight. So I think that probably changed quite a lot of my path going forward, and I knew more than anything that I wanted to go to university, that had to be, in a sense, like I wanted to be successful so that I could be there for my brother if he needed me. So I think that probably set me on quite a focused and quite a determined path of, ironically, did not want to be a politician, but I knew I wanted to work in or around politics, and that's something I really passionately cared about, and probably from quite a young age had a real sense of injustice and inequality, and just the sense of people who had and people who didn't, and that real, why was society like that? Why did some people have lots more and other people have little? And I think I remember being so aware of that in early years of secondary and doing like projects on kind of inequality, and I think my teacher was like, who are you? And I loved all of the kind of modern studies, politics. I just got it, I think, and that's probably not the most normal thing for like a 13-year-old wee girl to be quite like into that. So yeah, I think politics was, when I look back, inevitable, but it wasn't a foregone conclusion, I guess.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I sort of, I guess, rightly or wrongly, view politicians as being power hungry. You know, like they've obviously grown up and they want to have an important job. They want to have power and be able to make changes. But what you're describing is very different. That's like, that comes from a real human place. Like you just want to help people and, you know, fight against injustices and fight for equality. That's totally different.
I think politicians these days do have a bad rap. Like it's not helped by, you know, expensive scandals and Partygate and things that have happened quite recently that have just, you know, I do remember being in university and it was around the time of the Iraq War and there was lots of that was the original kind of expensive scandal, and I remember just having this really poor opinion of politicians and thinking, I don't want to be that. But if you don't stand up and if you don't make your voice heard, then how do you change the system? And it was that I can't complain about it if I'm not willing to be a part of that institution. But every now and then it does still have probably that reputation, because there's a spectrum. I think there are so many politicians who do go into politics for the right reasons and they want to make a change and they want to make a difference, and on a really human level, regardless of political party, you all kind of have the same goals. And then there are some people who probably are more akin to the kind of politician view that you have, sadly, and they let the side down for everyone.
Yeah. Well, let's hope we get more people like you, doing your job. And what's the reality, would you say, of, you know, being a female MP? Do you feel like female MPs and politicians are taken as seriously as the men? Do you feel like when you are down in London that you almost have to prove yourself somehow, or do you feel quite comfortable that you are, you know, viewed as, you know, as an equal to all the male MPs?
I don't know if it was maybe just my upbringing, but both my parents kind of were like in the trade union movement, and I was sort of brought up with the belief that you're no better than anyone else, but you're kind of every bit as good. And I got to Westminster in the same way as absolutely everyone else. Did I have the same background? No. Did I have the same kind of privileges and opportunities growing up? No. But I got there anyway, and I felt that my voice had a place, that I was a young 20-something woman, that my voice deserved to be heard, and that voice of my constituents in the area that I grew up in and that I call home deserved to kind of have a platform and just to not simply stand on the sidelines. So I perhaps went there with a kind of view of, I'm not going to be kind of this woman in politics, but someone that stands up and really speaks up. And yes, being a woman in politics and having that representation is so important. Being an openly gay politician is so important, but being all of those things and being able to speak for, I think particularly women as well. I've realised, especially through the Miscarriage campaign, that there's so many things that women experience that sadly, you know, men do experience these things too, but it's so unique and they don't have the same platform, they don't have the same privilege or opportunity to speak in the House of Commons and say, this is something that really profoundly impacted on my life and we could make this better through legislation, through policy. And, you know, miscarriage is one of those things, but fertility treatment, menopause, there are so many issues that impact on women that men, with the greatest of respects, you know, they can understand it, they can empathise, they can experience it in their own way, but it doesn't happen to them. So my Miscarriage campaign is about parents, but it is specifically about saying women don't get to be heard on this, and there's a stigma attached to this that there shouldn't be. We should talk about this and we should make legislation, we should make policy, and we should make Parliament work for those women as well. Definitely.
So tell me what the current status is. Am I right in thinking that if a miscarriage occurs after 24 weeks, is it like a bereavement leave that the parents can take, but before that there isn't anything that they can take?
Yeah, so the way it's classified is pregnancy loss after 24 weeks is referred to as a stillbirth. So legally that is the legal definition. So parents who experience that loss after 24 weeks are entitled to up to 2 weeks bereavement leave, and that's for the loss of a pregnancy or a child up to the age of 18 years, which is incredible and welcome and absolutely 2 weeks paid leave is probably not even enough, but it's a statement and it says you are entitled to leave. What has happened to you is significant, and we recognise that both in law and in life that you should have that legal recognition. So my campaign is saying, well, what about a parent who experiences that loss before 24 weeks? Are they not entitled to that same recognition of that grief and that loss? It's just as profound. In some ways it can be as profound and equally more devastating, because there's that kind of idea that, well, perhaps if it happened early it's not as significant as if it happens later, and we shouldn't create this hierarchy of grief. It's loss, and it is a grief that people and parents face, and sadly too often they face it alone and in silence because they feel that they're not entitled to that, and that's a really sad fact. And the point that I made was, what if you're a parent who experiences that loss at 23 weeks and 6 days? Nothing in the law says you are entitled to leave. And okay, there are some incredible employers, and there are some really excellent best practice of large companies who are introducing their own policies, of employers who have gone above and beyond, but equally there's no consistency, and you could work for that one employer who doesn't recognise it, and there's no legal obligation for them to do so. So like New Zealand and more recently Northern Ireland, we are calling for the government to introduce as a minimum 3 days. But I would love it if the government would match the 2 weeks bereavement leave that they've introduced after 24 weeks, because I don't believe there's any difference in the grief that a parent experiences.
Yeah. Do you think that 2 weeks is enough? I mean, you said that, 3 days is what you're campaigning for, but in an ideal world, what do you think should be the minimum that's being offered?
I mean, I absolutely know that 3 days is not enough, and you might then say, well, why are you campaigning for 3 days? But it was really just, there's a legislative precedent that exists in other countries who have introduced leave on that basis. And I think to get it on the statute, it's that incremental change. It's accepting that in politics change doesn't happen quickly and it won't happen overnight, but to get the recognition in the first instance, 3 days would be a start. But we have spoken to employers who've said 7 days, 10 days, 14 days. It may never be enough. Like, one parent might just be grateful that their employer gave them a few days off and understood. Another person might need weeks and months and much longer. And I think for the parents who have bravely shared their story with me and spoken at length about the physical effects on the woman who has experienced the miscarriage, but on both parents who said, the father didn't feel like he was entitled to leave at all. He just felt like he had to go back to work and he couldn't be there for his partner. I know even in like a same-sex relationship, if you're not the gestational mother, then perhaps you don't feel that you're entitled to the same grief as your partner. So there is a real conversation about, there's the physical aspect of miscarriage that, someone needs more support, and that's, the legislation is one part of it, and that leave is a part of it. Getting that in the statute would be a meaningful recognition that loss and that grief it's not a sickness. So why would you be taking sick pay when you're not sick, so to speak? Yeah. You've just lost a pregnancy and you're experiencing profound grief and loss. And yeah, there are the physical aspects, which, sick pay would go some way, but it's quite a significant difference if you're in a job where that pay just won't pay the bills either if you need to take an extended period of leave. And many fathers said that they took unpaid leave because they didn't feel like they could ask for holidays or leave. And the point is, we should have a workplace culture where there is a wraparound of support, where we recognise that people experience significant life events, and any good employer knows that if you treat your employees with respect, if you care for them, if you create an open dialogue where your employee can come and speak to you and say, I didn't disclose my pregnancy because it was before 12 weeks, but this thing has happened to me and it's really set me back and I need time. And that's a really difficult conversation to have, which is why having the right to take leave just opens up that ability. And some people won't want it. Some people won't want to disclose, especially if they're trying to conceive, and it does sometimes happen on more than one occasion.
That was the question I was going to ask you, actually. Was I was thinking all this through, and I was thinking, I wonder if some people, if they're, they don't want, perhaps they work in a culture where they know that they'll be discriminated against because they're actively trying to have a family, and they'll lose out on that promotion or whatever it may be. It's the whole issue is just filled with, risks, I guess, isn't it?
It is, and sadly, we already know the statistics around pregnancy and maternity discrimination. They exist and they are stark, and that's another reason why I think, interestingly, when you include the fact that it's parents and you speak about fathers, strangely the dialogue changes and people are so much more receptive because you have male managers who go, oh yeah, my wife went through that and I get that. And there is an understanding there, which is good, because I think sometimes it's been seen as a women's issue and just something that happens to women. And actually, we do need to change the way workplaces operate, because the way that women and parents are starting families is changing too. Like the number of people who are having children later in life, who are going through fertility treatment because perhaps they either have known fertility issues or, for example, you're in a same-sex relationship and you're trying to conceive. There are all these things that we just quietly go to our work and we don't make a noise about it. And I've read stories of women having to kind of take their hormone injections in their bathroom and work because they don't want to highlight it to their employer. And that's the state of play that we're in. But if we change the way workplaces worked for young people, especially who are coming up through, who prioritise their career, so they're starting at that point a bit later. And if you could just transform workplace policies to recognise that there's a value in saying, yeah, we get it, you want to start a family, you're going to have to take maybe X amount of time, but in the long run, if we treat you with respect and we support you and we reward and we recognise your abilities rather than the fact that you're potentially going to have a child, then the benefits to an employer are so much more. And that, for me, is the fundamental point. If we could encourage workplaces to have their own policy that goes beyond statute, that goes beyond legislation, then what you would find is that people are far more rewarded, that they'll give more to their jobs, to their careers, because they feel recognised. And I think perhaps that's the part that we're missing. We're not getting that sense of the work culture is changing. People want to have flexible working, people want to work from home, but they also want to come to the office and they want to have promotions and they want to have opportunities. And if we could get that right, then you start to change the gender pay gap, you start to tackle workplace discrimination. Quite passionate about this.
Yeah, no, it's great. We need you to be.
Women will give so much to their employment over their lifetime, and they'll have pensions that they want to plan for as well, and they have careers. And your own example of your husband stays at home with the children, like, families work differently. It's no longer just this kind of 2.4, the wife stays at home, the husband goes to work. So workplaces have to adapt to that as well.
Yeah. And you mentioned New Zealand and Northern Ireland. What are they doing that's different to how we have things here?
So Northern Ireland have introduced bereavement leave in line with the UK, but theirs doesn't have a cut-off of 24 weeks. They're consulting to have bereavement leave universally. And that's basically what I believe we should have had. When I feel like it's a missed opportunity. The bereavement bill is great, and the legislation now exists, but that arbitrary cut-off was created for its own reasons, for legal definitions and reasons. But tell that to someone who experiences that loss under that cut-off, and they don't care whether the pregnancy was legally recognised as X, Y or Z. It's a loss, and it was a pregnancy, and that impact to one person can be different from another. But the point is, the right should be there, and it's about creating that legal right that currently doesn't exist.
And how hopeful are you that this campaign will be successful? And are there things that we can do? You know, can we be writing to our own MPs? You know, is there, is there something that we can sign? Is there, you know, should we be writing to our own employers, asking them to put something in place? What can we do?
So yes to all of that. There is a petition at the moment which already has over 38,000 signatures, which is calling on the government to introduce paid leave. Write to your MPs. We've secured a Westminster Hall debate, which isn't in the main chamber, but my goal is that we will have a debate in the main chamber. So write to your MPs, encourage them to attend the debate on Tuesday. The debate is in Westminster Hall at 11 a.m. It's only a 30-minute debate, but it's the first debate that we've been able to secure on this issue, and I hope that it won't be the last. The Miscarriage Association have a workplace pledge which workplaces can sign up to say that they'll I think there's 5 key pledges that each workplace can, and they are quite realistic pledges as well, of, you know, will you create a workplace policy for miscarriage and ectopic pregnancy? Will you ensure that you have leave, that you have counselling services, that you have these kind of support? Now, not every workplace will be able to do all of those things, but if you can commit to the kind of 5 key asks, then you could create a far better workplace. And I think it's that kind of trying to have the best practice from the larger companies and be able to adapt that to the smaller companies, because the economy is made up of over 80% of small to medium enterprises, and it's those companies that don't have the resource, they don't have a large HR department or bespoke policies. So that's where I think the legislation would make a realisable difference, because it just gives them, you know, the ACAS guidance has been updated to say here's what you can have after 24 weeks and here's what you don't get before, but it'd be good if you gave them it. I think ACAS could do more to say, if the legislation existed, we recommend a minimum of 3 days leave, but here's some examples of policies that exist for 7, 10, 14, you know, and perhaps the policy could be flexible, so perhaps you don't need to take it in the one go, or perhaps you could take it at a later point when you feel that you need it most in a period of time. So yeah, in summary, there's lots that people can do. Definitely sign the petition, definitely call on your MP to support. I have a private members bill which was supposed to be here in December in its second reading. It's been moved to the end of March. There is also the employment bill, which is at some point coming down the track, and the employment bill will be the opportunity on a variety of issues to transform the rights and the legal rights that people have within the workplace. So I think that is a real opportunity in so many ways to make legislation work and to adapt it to the modern world that we live in the modern workplace that we want to adapt to living in as well. I think some of the proposals include flexible leave, perhaps to make it easier for people to be able to ask for it without it being such an arduous task, and to make it possible for modern families to be able to both be at work and both provide for their family and adapt to all the requirements that childcare comes with. So there's lots that we can do, and there's a lot
to do, isn't there?
Yeah, there always is. But
thank you so much, Angela, for giving me your time today to talk through it. I'm going to put a link to the petition on the podcast notes so that people can just click through really easily and sign it and find out more about the campaign. It feels like there's so much to do, and at the moment, with everything that's going on in the world, it's really important, I think, that these issues don't get forgotten about and don't get swept under the carpet. So it's great that you are, flying the flag and really, pushing for this and shouting about this. So thank you on behalf of parents everywhere.
No, thank you so much. It's really lovely to meet you as well. And I'm sorry it's taken so long to get this together, but I'm so grateful for your time as well. It's lovely to meet you.
You're a busy person. What can I say? It's fine. Thank you so much. It's been great to chat to you.
You too. Take care. Bye.